Welcome to Become an Architect, the podcast where we delve into the art and science of unlocking your inborn potential. I am your host, Dr. Brant Janogan, the founder of Architect Chiropractic, and I'm thrilled to embark on this transformative journey with you. In each episode, we'll explore the fascinating intersection of chiropractic wisdom, neuroscience, and the incredible stories of those who have harnessed their innate power to achieve extraordinary success for themselves. In this episode, we have truly a unique and special individual. And we're going to dive right into this because it's going to get juicy quick. So hang on, buckle up, and enjoy as we learn how to unleash your inborn potential. Dr. Keith, how are we?
I'm doing great. You like said some of the magic words. You said juicy and extraordinary. Those are like that's like those are the Donnieisms, right? Those always come up. It's always like, and I didn't realize it till I was a little bit into practice. I started saying it unconsciously. I'm like, oh, this is like juicy. Like I get to those contacts or I'm about to adjust somebody. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to say it.
You
But
can't
no,
help it.
yeah, ready to be extraordinary. Anyways, I'm Dr. Keith McLaughlin. I do a very unique line of work called network spinal. For those of you out there who don't know what this is, because probably a lot of people don't, I'm going to keep it really simple. You can think of it as like spinal reflexology. So instead of going in and moving the bones, what we're doing is we're having a conversation with your brain. We're letting your body start to learn how to adjust itself and naturally reaccumulate not only the energy, but also the tension on the spinal cord, tension on your muscles. It starts rechanging and shifting the entire tone of your system and really shifts who you are as a person. I've seen everything from depression, anxiety start to clear up in my office to simple, low back pain stuff. And it's pretty extraordinary to see the power of the healing body just really kick in. But that's what I do. I'm currently coming up on 3 years in practice, and I'm just getting more passionate, more fired up as I keep going. So that's where I'm at.
That's amazing. And so if people don't know what network chiropractic is, that is
Yeah.
exactly what Dr. Keith practices. Is honestly, it's amazing to watch you work, man, because watching you just be present with a human being and be able to take it there, that is a special skill that not everyone, I believe everyone has it in them, but you've refined the process. And so you're able to access it faster. And
Yeah.
with your adjusting and where you can go with the depth of layers,
Mhm.
it's just you're an amazing human being. And we've known each other for 4 years.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your growth is, man, it's fun to watch you grow.
Ooh, that's cool. It's fun to watch me grow. I'm like taking that in. That itches a part of me that I really want to be seen in. So I'm excited because I feel like I grow really quickly. So I feel touched to hear that. I'm also curious about like what do you observe in me that's different? I'm a little bit more curious on that. Like, what do you observe that I'm different in how I interact with people?
Hmm. So when we met, you were very in touch, you were very present. Now I believe that the potency in the depth of what you can go is deeper. So
Mm,
the waters are a little bit higher, so it takes further to get out to the middle of the boat that's sitting in the water, if that makes sense. Like you got to work your way to the boat from the shore, and it's a little bit deeper to get there.
yeah, there's like it was deep before, but now there's like a really much larger capacity of experience to be had.
Yes.
Huh. Yeah, so I think one of the most important things, and this has shifted recently for me as well, and it's absolutely has changed my adjusting. And I mean like absolutely big game changer, is focusing on the energetics instead of the physical. And it's when we start talking about energetics, it often jumps into the woo world. I'm talking really physical. Like, what does it do? How does it manifest on the table? Because I kind of like it's the concept where it's like if somebody goes and takes shrooms and has this crazy trip, what's the point of the trip if it doesn't change your life? If it doesn't physically manifest and change something physical in your life, what the heck is the point of it? And the same thing goes for my work and network. Some people get into this like weird space where they pursue network for like a high. That is the wrong way to pursue network.
Mhm.
You pursue network to find a new normal, find a new way of living, a new baseline where your baseline starts becoming extraordinary, where miracles are literally like your everyday. And that is something like that's a big sale. Like that's a big thing to reach towards. And what I've noticed and from my experience of being a practitioner in this is And a big learning lesson is it's all about the energetics. Because
Mhm.
the energetics manifest the physical structure, it manifests how it's brought together and how it comes together. It makes up everything else. And also understanding we all have different energetics too. Some of us are male, some of us are female, right? Some of us are tall, some of us are short, some of us are super muscular, some of us are wiry and strong, right? There's differences physically and there's difference energetically too. So understanding how we energetically function is really important. I just got to host a breath class yesterday, which was a lot of fun. And we started talking about external, internal traits. And we were talking about just the reverse of seeing how does energy flow in your body. We go into one position and people are like, oh my gosh, I don't feel good. I feel drained. I feel
Mhm.
lost. And we go into the other position and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel abundant. I feel opened up. I feel ready to take on the world. And it's just by changing the perspective and changing their flow. Where's the energy actually at? And so for somebody who's a little bit more dominant, let's say more fueled by movement or more fueled by being in the future, it might not be good to sit down and meditate and not move and focus on their breath and focus on what they did in the past. All of a sudden their energy might drop like a rock. And we've created social norms around like healing modalities. We all got to realize we're all in a system of organizing information and energy
Yep.
and recognizing what that is and being able to depersonalize and step out of that and then be aware of what's the story here, right? So I can show up in this podcast and be like, I'm Keith. I'm Dr. Keith. I mean, I even introduced I'm Dr. Keith. What is Keith? What's the identity of Keith? And so when people get into this state, they often like identify really hardly. I might identify as a chiropractor. I identify as somebody who practices network spinal. I identify as a male. I identify, right? There's all these identifications that are put on. There's nothing wrong with the identification, but when we get attached to the story, that becomes problematic. What if I said in 10 minutes, like, I'm not a network spinal practitioner anymore? Is that okay? And I'm just using this as a silly example, but having the capacity to change our identity, because knowing our identity is not something that's solid, it's fluid. And
Mhm.
so allowing ourselves to change and not getting attached to the story. The part of us that's typically attached to the story is the victim, usually. We're trying to condense and hold on to what we know. And we're like, ooh, this is what's certain. Let me hold this little bit of energy and information. Let me hold on to what I know. That way I can survive. It's a defense mechanism. And so holding on to that and attaching to that is often what we see people do. So having the capacity to focus on something even greater, something more. And in order to do that, we got to be able to mold our story. We have to allow ourselves to be wrong.
Mhm.
We have to allow ourselves to take responsibility too. That's a hard one for people. When people switch they into a transformation into power, and I know you're a really powerful person. Just being in your presence, people will know that. You haven't met this guy. His presence alone is powerful enough. And when you step into your power, the reason you have power is also because you have responsibility. These are two things that are definitely tied. Something that my brother said to me, which hits me to my heart, and it keeps coming up. He said he loves Spider-Man, by the way. He absolutely loves Spider-Man. And he says, I reverse Uncle Ben's quote. With great power comes great responsibility. With great responsibility comes great power.
Mhm.
So if we seek out ways to take on more responsibility, you will find more power in your life. And so instead of holding on to your identity, holding on to your energetics, and holding on and trying to collapse and utilize bound information, instead we focus on something unbound. We take on more responsibility, more risk, and we become something else. And there's a balance between the two. Both of them are important. And I imagine most people, once they access unbound energy, they'll realize why I pursue it vehemently. Because it's like freaking magic. It just changes things without things just move into coherence. It's something really beautiful.
Well, you're reminding me, I was having a conversation with a patient earlier this week, and I had, I was adjusting her thoracics, and she's like, what do you do? She's like, what happens when you're adjusting? And of course, I want to go into the mechanism. I'm like, well, we're adjusting the spine and realigning the joints and then changing the position of the disc, and we're taking pressure off the nerves, but that's the mechanism. I was like, I'm just touching energy.
Mhm.
I was like, if I address the energetic coherence, the matter will change and correct itself.
Yes.
And she kind of looked at me and was like, so you're addressing the energy and shifting the energy, and that's adjusting my posture and my position of my spine. I was like, yes.
Mhm.
I was like, that's how we get long-term effects.
Yes.
I could adjust that bone all day, but if the energy behind it that's holding it in that position, the root cause of that specific misalignment or subluxation, why it's there, if we don't address that, then it's just going to keep coming back. And then we still have that same pattern.
Mhm. So I think one of the most powerful questions, and this is really simple. I'm I get frustrated when people deny or don't look at philosophy. Philosophy, it's the love of wisdom. It's the
Mhm.
love of like the knowledge and growing the knowledge. And we start with the metaphysics. And to me, the metaphysics is the why. Why even bother in the first place? Why even bother getting up? Why even bother living? Why, right? And so when people deny philosophy, I'm like, you're choosing not to have a why in life. And then you question why you become a nihilist so quickly.
Mm.
It's like
Mhm.
you don't have a why in life. So of course you're going to approach things like as if nothing matters. Of course, that's the outcome.
Right.
What else would there to be do? But instead, if we step back and we actually address that why is this here? Why are we doing this in the first place? We get a little bit deeper to like what's going on. We get more clear and we find that coherence, right? So when we say instead, when a bone goes out of alignment, we say that's wrong. How do we know it's wrong?
Right.
Right? How do we know? And that's the point of objective measures and all this stuff. We can go down that route. And something that I find more important is how do I know what is right for this person? And I think
Exactly.
morality is the wrong question to ask. I personally, I think morality really sits in the lower stages of network, and it starts moving into dichotomizing. This is right. This is wrong. This is how you should live. This shouldn't. I don't even think that should be like. There's usage in morality, and there's usage in talking about this type of stuff. Talking about justice system and all that type of things. And I think the question is very de-energized. It's not getting a point because life is made of grays. We're not some like light switch where we're just like.
Right.
So instead, when I see a bone out of place, my question isn't not necessarily is this right or wrong. It's what's going on here? Why is this happening? Why is the body putting the body like this? I see somebody come in and their head's like this. Like, and I'm like, how do you feel? They're like, I feel good. Do you feel straight? Yeah, I feel completely straight. And their head's freaking torqued out an inch, and you're like, okay, sweetheart, well, we're gonna get you adjusted and make sure you're
Yeah.
doing better. And so instead of asking the question and saying, well, your posture's wrong. I don't say the posture's wrong. I don't know if the posture's right or wrong. I'm not God, unfortunately. I'm gonna keep working there, but might take longer than I expect. But
Critical sec.
it's yeah, different story, different podcast. And I'm asking, why is the body doing that? That looks funky. That doesn't look. There's something wrong there. Ooh, there's a lot of muscular tension. Huh. I'm noticing the C1 feels really drastically translated.
Mhm.
Noticing they're holding that posture. I noticed when I talked to them about their relationship with their husband, they kind of veered away from the conversation. Huh. How does this all tie into this human being in front of me?
Yeah.
The physical, the energetic, spiritual, the mental, everything in between. Everything. This human soul on the planet. What's going on? Playing souls, not roles. This is something Donnie always talks about. Souls, not roles.
I
And
like
so I'm asking that question of like, how does this all come together? What's the story? So as I go through my scanning procedure, I do CLA inside, I do thermograph, I do SCMG, HRV. For those who don't know, I'm getting how well is the nervous system adapting? Where's the energy going with the heat? I'm checking heat and then electricity. I'm also asking where the energy is going, just looking at
it.
different ways of how is the nervous system communicating with body? Your body's already intelligent. Cut your hand, it heals itself. It literally took a sperm and egg, made all of you, and is continuing to organize you to this day. It's crazy. It's crazy to think about. Like it's absolutely insane. And we're eons away from understanding how this thing operates still.
Absolutely.
There's
Absolutely.
so much depth to what we do. And the more you pocket your ego and be like, put the ego in the right place. I don't think ego is the enemy, but I think if you put it in the right place, you'll have a better easefulness with life. The ego wants to find the judgment. Is this right, wrong? Is this how I'm supposed to interact? How am I socially supposed to judge? It's like trying to figure out the world, right? And so if we can be like, okay, I see that part of me. I see it's trying to figure out, and then step up a little bit more and say, what's it like to be here now, present with this person?
Mhm.
I'm noticing I want to like slap him in the face when they talk about their husband. Whoa, where's that urge coming from?
Mhm.
And I sit with, I have these urges and I want to listen to my animal brain because the reactor brain's intelligent. It has some type of intelligence to it, right? It knows what it's doing. And it's like, and then, sometimes you can actually say that. I don't always do this. It depends on the situation if it feels okay or appropriate to, but I'll be like, hey, I noticed when you talked about your husband, I got really frustrated and angry. Do you have frustration and anger with your husband? Oh, I do. And then sure enough, we find out that C1 is translated because she can't handle the information and energy of trusting her husband.
Mm.
That's getting locked up in the C1 and it locks up and it holds on and it holds tension. And the body's saying, no, 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 I can't handle that right now. That's too scary of the thought of relinquishing trust and giving my trust to my husband, to be able to be in a space of that. And so the body defensively protects itself from that information. It says, we'll process this later when there's a better opportunity to process this. And so instead of looking at the body of doing these things as good or bad, looking at this is what it did to survive the moment. It's always trying to organize you. It's always trying to serve you. It's always trying to help you in the best way it can. And the awesome thing is chiropractic adds fuel to the fire that's already there. And then all of a sudden, we, like in my case, I go and I take a nice little tap. All of a sudden she breathes in. She can finally relax. She's like, her body relaxes and says, oh, it's okay. I don't have to fight to
Mhm.
survive. And then a little question pops in. What if I could have this conversation with my husband? All of a sudden there's a doorway for something more. And
Yes.
this is the stuff that I get really excited about. I'm shaking my hands like crazy. I get really excited about this stuff because this is when your life changes. I
Mhm.
had somebody come in 3 out of 10 low back pain, and they're like, "Oh, I've had it forever." I had other things going on too, and I take quality of life surveys in my office. They registered at 23%
Wow.
out of 100. Out of
20?
100, 23%. I do not care about the low back pain.
No.
I am more concerned about where they are and how they're living their life. I'm way more concerned about that because you can have a quality of life of 80 or 90 out of 100 and be like jamming, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I have a little back pain," and you're like, "Whatever, I still love life." And so sometimes you got to ask that question, what's more important to you? Is to run away from the pain or to achieve what you're meant to do and what's in your heart? What you really want to do, what you're craving, what your soul is craving here. So much so that it came to the earth to actually become alive. Such a deep yearning that it literally has forced itself to be in existence in physical matter and to suffer the suffering of being alive. It's that important. There's something there for you that's that important. That's something really beautiful. Thank you for letting me rant.
Because I can attest to that exact narrative because that's my life. Like that's my story. You know, I have 2 fractures in my low back. I live in at least a 7 to 8 out of 10 pain every single day.
Mm,
I still run half marathons. I still race mountain bikes. I still race bicycles. I still snowboard and backcountry and do all of the things I possibly can because I know that the quality of life, even though the limitations of matter that are presented, I'm not going to allow those to be limitations that stop me from experiencing life.
yeah.
It's like that's a non-negotiable for me.
Mm,
And so I'll do everything I can to ensure that I can have a great quality of life while mitigating and minimizing the pain, correcting my posture, correcting my diet, correcting my lifestyle, implementing the things that are necessary for me to not be in pain, to correct and to remove the things that are causing distraction or causing pain or causing
yeah,
destruction. And man, like I can tell you that in my journey alone, from when I started chiropractic school to where I am, it's about 5 years. I've lost almost 100 pounds. I've transformed who I am over and over. Like the person I am today, I don't even recognize because I've allowed myself to egoically die, to shed myself of entitlement, to open myself to be a better man, a better partner, a better lover, a better brother, a better son. Like I show up as much as I can because that's a part of the quality of life too, is it's not just about you. And you had mentioned something earlier talking about, ego versus identity and personalization and depersonalizing, becoming more introverted or extroverted, in meditation or breath work or how we view the world. Do I take an internal narrative and that's the only narrative that I allow? Or is there an external narrative? And if there is an external narrative, do I judge others? Do I judge myself? Do I compare myself? Is it a competition? And ultimately, like, yeah, you brought it back to Spider-Man. Uh, like I love because Spider-Man, I mean, Spider-Man was Stan Lee's favorite uh superhero Marvel character. And it's so true though, with responsibility comes power, and with power comes responsibility. So it's with that responsibility, you're empowered, but that empowerment creates responsibility that ultimately, when you break down responsibility, you have to be able to care for others and you got to have passion. And passion means that you have purpose. And if you have care and you care about others, that means that you're full of a servant's heart, or you're about service. And down at the very core roots and the values of that person that has that empowerment, that power, that responsibility, they care about others and they have a purpose to serve others. And it's just so cool that we get to show up for ourselves and our patients and then help them in that journey itself.
Yeah. And
But
we have to grow as well. I love one of my favorite topics is like because being this type of work, it attracts a lot of people that are into woo-woo stuff, which I don't mind. I have a fun time with it.
I
And I
love the
love
woo.
it. I love it because not a lot of people have created a lot of structure in that realm.
Uh-huh.
And I've started to be able to help people with the structure present with myself too. I was like feeling dropped in with you a lot as you're going through. I lost my train of thought too, which is
Oh,
cool.
you're fine. You're fine.
I'm like zoning in into my body. I'm like, whoa, okay, hello. Um, there's so many things I wanted to highlight about what you're saying and the importance. There's like one question that's coming back up, which was like, what's it like to be the architect of your life?
Uh-huh.
Like in this moment right now.
For me,
Yeah, yeah, for you.
it's fun. It's, I mean, like I've ever since I was little, I've loved taking things apart and putting them back together and figuring out how they work.
Yeah,
I joined the Marines at 17, 11 days after high school. I became a aviation mechanic. I got out. I became a federally licensed aviation mechanic. I've worked on some of the world's top, just absolutely cool projects, platforms. I've worked drones, jets, helicopters, um,
yeah,
like all kinds of really, really unique and one-off projects.
yeah.
That's given me a lot of perspective that now I'm a chiropractor, that I use all of the knowledge I acquired as an aviation mechanic and understanding physics and astrophysics and aerodynamics, um, mechanical and electrical engineering, circuitry, all of it applies to the human body. And opening my own practice, becoming the architect of my own life, is applying my skill set that I've accumulated my entire life for the service of others. Because as an architect, you serve other people as much as you serve yourself with your own experience. It's about showing up, knowing what you're great at, and then proving what you're great at by the skill set, the effort, the dedication, the
Mhm.
determination that you put forth. And then like almost relishing in the reward of other people, not even yourself, but other people you get to watch other people become the architects of their life,
Yeah.
finding autonomy, finding health, finding vitality again. Like
Yeah.
I could never ask for anything greater.
Reminds me of like, how can I celebrate your success? We had a brother of ours, Jamal Frooster, was winning an award out here in Tucson, right? And somebody posted on it. They're like, "Oh, they should make Jamal the mayor." Like, so amazing. And I felt so impacted by it because I'm like, I'm out here on Tucson, and I'm like, nobody's saying that about me. And then
Mm,
I touched up against my ego, and I want to share this because it's important, because this is a very real, raw experience for me, and it's a vulnerable thing to say. The the part of me, I was like, I could choose to fight him and be like, oh, I'm not good enough, and compare myself to him. Or I could say, we're all on our own ladder. We're not on one ladder. We're all on our own ladder and we all have our own tasks. How can I celebrate him? How can I celebrate his achievement? And he
yes.
knows me. I mean, we're freaking fraternity brothers. I mean, we're colleagues. His success is my success. I could choose to look at it that way. Whereas he gets better, he's going to attract more people in his field, and I'm already connected with them. And those some people are going to trickle over to me. That's just naturally, and vice versa, right? So I could perceive it as a we, or I could perceive it as a me.
Ooh, ooh,
So I'm perceiving him as a we. We did it. Yeah, he's up there. He's up there on the stage. He's being celebrated. And we did it. We're doing something. We're helping people, be in the celebration of it. And I'm not one important thing I want to highlight. I'm not dropping that other part. That other part did feel dropped. Like it felt like, oh, I'm unworthy.
mm,
Like, how can I be with that part and be like, oh, I'm comparing myself. I'm feeling unworthy being in his presence. And I want to have a brighter future too. So I'm not dropping that part and I'm choosing behaviors that don't fit that part. So you can be angry and not hurt people. And that's the layer that I usually see with most people, that's how it typically shows up. Is
yeah.
I don't know why it is, but it's like society doesn't want to experience anger or frustration. And it's like you can be angry and frustrated and not hurt somebody. You can be and experience the emotion and choose the behaviors that doesn't hurt somebody else. And it's
Well,
you just own it. You just be like, hey, when you said that, that really frustrated me. You don't have to throw a punch at them.
mm,
Just
well,
own it. Own what's real for you.
even in celebration, uh, you have to recognize someone else's greatness,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then the intrinsic feeling of envy and
Mm,
jealousy and gluttony. I would say, like I like to go back to the seven sins,
mm,
seven virtues, seven sins. So it's like I feel envious of this person because that's not me on stage,
mm,
right? I'm like jealous of their accomplishments, their accolades, their uh what they're attributing and then being celebrated for it. So it's like, why am I not doing that? Because I also feel that way too whenever I see other people finding their own success. It's like why don't I have that? Right.
yeah.
And
And I personally ascribe to Adler's psychology. I don't know if you've ever come across Adlerian psychology,
I don't know
which
about
is it's really cool stuff. Look up the book The Courage to be Disliked. It is I would probably put it in my top five, if it not in my top 10 for books. It's has absolutely changed my relationship with worthiness.
Hmm.
The reason why is exactly what I just said earlier. And this guy does a great job. He's not the original thought on it, but he developed a book that really well at dialoguing and explaining it really thoroughly. And the idea is like if you always play this game of comparison, you will never be worthy enough
Mm-mm.
because you will always either be above or below somebody. And that's what I mean. If you put everybody on the same ladder, of course, there's always going to be someone further up on the ladder. But if you start treating life from an intrinsic value standpoint, we're being like, we're all on our own ladders. Yes, you're a chiropractor, I'm a chiropractor, but like, I'm doing way different stuff from you, man. And so you might look at me and be like, oh, I can't do that. I'm like, dude, like penguin climbing a tree, like, like that's just not how you operate. Like that's just, and it goes back to what I was saying at the start. It's like, pay attention to the energetics. Like we have a personality in who we are and how we show up with the world, and it's important to match that energy. So I think it's more important to find the coherence with who you are
Mhm.
rather than necessarily finding this comparison. So I like as you started talking about like the envy and stuff, I could feel my gut activate and my desire to like not even go down the conversation route about it. Like it almost felt like I was just like, I don't even know if I want to really want to talk more about this. I'm like,
Yeah.
I kind of know where I'm at with it, which is like I see that part of me, I see where it's at, and I'm gonna choose to be with myself and
Mhm.
be with my own intrinsic value and be like, I'm worthy because I'm the only one playing this game. I'm the only one playing Keith or playing this soul.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
you gotta have that main character energy. If you're playing, um,
I wouldn't even say main character because even that implies that there's side characters.
well, exactly. I make this joke at people whenever they have like the fluoride stare. They're not there.
The fluoride stare. I love that. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna use that.
Please do, because it's so true. Like when you're having a conversation
Accurate.
and they're just like not there, like, how can I take your order? Okay, is that it? Yeah, 762. You're like, okay, great. You're an NPC.
Yeah.
Like you're not playing, you're not booted on, you're not logged on, you're not playing this game that's called life. So you're just a transactional character that's here to just like you're in the system, you're in the matrix, you're in this box, and you're only playing this game this way because it's the only way you know how to play. But
Mhm.
you're necessary for the game to run.
Yeah.
So it's like, do we break pattern and pull them out? Or is it necessary? Do we have the time and energy? So I want to reflect a couple of things
I would
because
say red pill and blue pill.
yeah, ain't that the truth? And
That would be my response to that, but keep going.
somebody told me the other day, they're like, you're red pilling your patients. And I was like, you're damn right I am.
And they can choose to go back. That's fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in that. There's no guilt in that. If
Mm-mm.
that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do with your life. And even that is taking ownership. Maybe that really is the red pill, having the choice to choose the blue pill, you know? Like we could go into the meta of that. And like that's so important. What to me, what's really important is you having the opportunity to decide. You make the choice. You make the decision for yourself and you claim your own authority in your life and you claim your own gifts because that's the only way. And maybe being the NPC is like sometimes we don't realize it, but sometimes those people actually have it like you start talking to them and they're like, no, this is the way I want to live my life.
Yeah.
I enjoy having lax free. I don't need to go save the world or change the world or do these amazing things or go run, 10 Ironmans over a week or something like that. Like they're like, I just want to live my life and enjoy it. And I'm like, wow. And I kind of feel jealous of those people, even though I have like bigger aspirations. I feel jealous because I'm like, they got it figured out and they're already living their life. They're already living the way they want. And it's not like, oh my gosh, this is mind blowing, but that might be their version of extraordinary for them, you know?
Well, I mean, it's a beautiful story, and everyone has their own journey. Because like I lived that life. It's like I was doing, like
Yeah.
living in a cul-de-sac, had a great job, great benefits, was traveling, doing the thing, and all of a sudden life was like, nope, we're done with that. Uprooted it, and then, here we are. Now we're a chiropractor and we have our own practice. So it's like life is a very funny way of spinning you through different experiences. Like
Mhm.
I feel like, Jungian psychology, we talk about the different archetypes. I feel like
Mhm.
I've lived different archetypal periods of my life to accumulate knowledge and understanding in that specific archetype to create, a main character that is
Yeah.
assembly who I am based off of my experiences I've accumulated in these different points of my life. Because it's like I played the hero, I played the rebel, I played the outlaw. It's like I played the magician and the sage, and like you accumulate this knowledge, and that's your character. And in that, um, you learn how to break loose. We were kind of talking about like envy, greed, and things. Like those are attachment styles. Like you said something about how people push their emotions away, or they push stuff away and they don't deal with it. Avoidance and dismissiveness, secure, insecure, avoidant, and dismissive attachment styles. How does
Mhm.
that person attach to the narratives that they're telling themselves? Are they conditioned? Have they adopted or adorned patterns from their caretakers or from their environment? Um, I like to look at these different conversations because it
Mhm.
cumulatively builds a shell around the person that is an imposter.
Mm.
And so we,
What's I feel like there's something I'm getting a little lost in your words. Like I'm still following you, and I feel like there's something really important you're getting at.
Mhm,
And I'm like wanting to go like maybe a layer deeper, and I'm like, there's something here that Brent really wants everybody to know, not just myself. Something really important about this development of like the imposter of like developing the identity or like creating the archetypal stuff.
mhm. Well, we've talked a lot about the ego. You know,
Yeah,
we've talked a lot about like how ego entitlement, um, we built this story, this persona of who we are and what we have to be and what we want to be. But there's layers of imposter syndrome wrapped and holding that story together.
yeah,
And when you're breaking free of, like we were talking red pill, blue pill, when you're breaking away of a system, when you're starting to become yourself and be authentic and start to show up and be great for yourself. So it's like rather than being envious, greedy, or feeling away in celebration. So like celebrating Jamal and his accomplishments. It's
yeah.
like in that there's an imposter syndrome. There's an imposter that's attacking you and attacking him because of his accomplishments and your lack of accomplishments.
Mm,
And in that comparison is an ego and an entitlement and a privilege of like, why not me? You know, I should be doing the same.
hmm.
It's like, no, like if it was you, you would be on stage. So
Yeah.
the effort that's required, it's like it really is something that you have to battle all these narratives to get to the person on stage. And then what is the person on stage thinking? Are they like, oh my God, like I can't believe I'm up here.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable. People are
He's
clapping
like,
for
I'd
me.
rather be that guy that's wanting to be me right now,
Yeah.
right?
And it's like we all the guy on stage, but the guy on stage wants to be us, and we're like, oh my God. And the guy on stage is like, I don't know what to do. I forget what I was gonna say. Oh, there's so many
Feels
people watching.
incoherent and just going crazy.
Yeah. And so it's like
Uh,
in this experience, it's like we want to be that person, but the person up there wants to be us. And so we're giant mirrors.
yeah.
And we can just like, wow, congratulations, you're amazing. I want to know more about you. I'm curious.
What's are you with like could you find your imposter right now? I'm like feeling experimental with this. Like, is
Hmm.
your imposter here right now in this present moment? And I'm gonna check in with myself. I want to see like
Yeah, yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
I think my imposter says right now, um, you're not that great. Like that's like the voice to myself is like, like and I'm like reflecting back on what we talked about. I'm like, we've talked about some awesome stuff. And my imposter is still like, what if he's not extraordinary enough? Like, there's more. Like, what if there's more? What if I miss something? What if I and then I'm like reflecting, I'm like, wow, I have the openness to have this conversation right now. I'm also in that meta too. And I'm like, that's pretty extraordinary. What's it like for you?
Two words. That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Like that's it. That's all. That's all you got. That's all you
Mm.
did. You
Oh,
know?
I feel drawn to my belly. I'm like, huh. You know,
Mhm.
like when you feel like depressed or sick or like you're at school and you don't want to be there and you like slouch into your belly. That's how it feels like.
Yeah, you just shrink. You're like, we deflate.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's that's
All you
that's
got.
that's my imposter. You know, it's like that's all you could do. It like, you just ran a 7 minute mile. You know, you just ran a record PR for your
Yeah.
half marathon. That's it.
Yeah.
Like all you got.
How are you holding that? So like there's the and when I say holding, like what's the emotion on the emotion? Are you frustrated with how that voice saying that's it? Are you like, oh, that like are you falling into it? Like you're like, oh my gosh, I am like I need to be better.
it used to be depression, right? So it used to be that
Oh,
I would beat myself up and like you're like, oh, that's all you can do, that's all you can achieve. You're only this, you've only done that. And it's like,
yeah.
but now I feel like rather than allowing myself to do the depressive dive, I love myself enough and I love the accomplishments and I remember the goals that I've set and the things I've accomplished in my life and where I've come from. And I steadily reflect on where I've come from so I can remember what it was like being this older version. Because if we forget who this older version of ourselves were, then we can't appreciate who we are today than who we're becoming. So you can't necessarily just avoid, dismiss, and forget the older version of you. And that could be your inner child, your inner teenager, your inner young adult, your first marriage, second marriage, your first childhood, or your first kid, like, whatever that narrative is that we're either dismissing or not holding on to. For myself, it's like military, my time overseas, my time as an aviation mechanic. It's like me as a child. It's like me after the Marines, me as a contractor, me as a student, me as a leader on campus, me as a leader in the fraternity.
Mhm.
Um, different timelines for me to look back on and reflect on the character that I've built over the years. Um, but it's taken me, you know, at least 5 years now to
Yeah.
look back on those versions of myself and to get an idea of who I've been so I can know who I am and who I want to become. And in the process of that, I've converted that conversation of my imposter to someone that's attacking me. At some point, I've just learned how to love the shadow that I am and the person
Mm.
that is my shadow. So it's like almost like I'm looking at a mirror and there's the
Yeah.
shadow and the light version looking at themselves. And like that's who I am. I'm an embodiment of both, not just one, not just the other. It's like they're dynamically in equilibrium with one another, always balancing like a yin and yang almost.
What's it like to be telling me this?
Um, I think I'm just exposing what it's like to be inside, like who I am and how I think and how I view myself.
And what's that like? Is it like is there fear or is there like okayness? Is there rawness? Like I imagine there's rawness, but
There's not fear. I don't really fear anymore. Um, I don't believe in being fearless. I feel like fear is a stimulant that tells you to slow down to pay more attention to what's going on.
mm,
Because when you're in a fearful state, it's not that you're actually feeling fear. You're feeling your body respond physiologically to a external stimulant that
mhm.
could potentially be harmful.
I'm being very and I hope you enjoy this little experimentation. I'm gonna play a little bit more. I'm gonna like I'm not
Hit me
gonna
with
like
it.
press into you, but like you'll get it. So being with you, I notice a few different things. I notice when you talk about the past, I want to like draw into the present. Like I'm almost like, okay, I'm hearing Brent's story and like how he got to here. And I'm like, there's value in that. Like there's definitely value in that. And I'm noticing there's this like craving to like come back to the present and also see like the future version of yourself. Like as an example, I noticed when you started talking about like letting your shadow in, you're like, this is how I let my shadow in. And I'm like, I'm curious what would be your relationship in a year from now with your shadow? Like, how do you see it in the future? Like, there's almost like this craving in the present and future. I'm also noticing as I'm hearing you talk about your relationship with these vulnerable or like I wouldn't say scary, but the parts that people don't like to tread in, like the
Mhm.
shadow and everything. I'm picturing it almost like you're letting it in, but you're putting a collar on it. That makes sense. So it's like I'll let you in, but you're gonna sit when I tell you to. I'll let
Yeah.
you in, but we're gonna like the walks are on my time type of thing. And I bring that up because it's like it almost feels like there's a little bit, and I'm using it as an analogy, there's almost like this little bit of like spaciousness still. Like you're letting it more than the average person, and kudos for that. I feel like elated for that. And I think what I'm craving is for you to find integration with those parts.
Mhm.
And like when I think about this, I think about this because I've done this a lot with I'm sorry for everybody listening. I have no filter, by the way, when it comes to I like to just get spontaneous. So, anyways, I had a lot of this with my sexuality too. And
Hmm.
I noticed that in my sexuality, especially being male, I think males will understand this, is our sexuality feels like a raging fire.
Yeah.
So it goes from like controlled, 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 and then it's just this like boom. And then we're
Mhm.
like, we're in our sexuality, like we're on fire, we're intense, we're like very much, it's all that, kind of pounding energy, right? And so it's like that masculine energy, it's like, and what I noticed as I tried to like integrate my sexuality more, that I had a lot of troubles, which is I feel, and this is why I'm bringing it up because I have hopes. I don't know if it's the right direction for you, but I have hopes that the way I worked through it, that you would find the same way working through it and find the same release that I have. And that is when I originally started with my sexuality became where I was close to it, but I still had a rein on it. I
Mhm.
still was doing what I did. I said, what would happen if I allowed myself to feel the full pleasure of my sexuality without shame, without guilt, where I actually allowed it to be in the driver's seat without fear, without anything, and I'll actually allow that to happen. And so, like, experimented with that and like played with the feeling of that being. And I was like, this actually, one, it feels great and it feels more integrated. And I discovered something really unique on that path and that journey, which was usually when we think about integration of emotions or like reintegrating emotions, right? We always think negative, but I never thought about this for what about the positive ones? What about the positive emotions you haven't integrated because you couldn't process them in the moment or chose not to process them in the moment?
Yeah.
And so we often think of like that one time you grieved, but you didn't fully feel the grief. That one time you got angry and you didn't fully feel the anger, right? Or that one time you felt sadness but didn't fully feel so. What about the one time you were with a woman and you were nervous about orgasming
Mhm.
and you didn't fully process the orgasm? You didn't allow yourself to fully feel the pleasure. What about that one time that your dad gave you an attaboy, but because of previous experiences, you didn't believe you deserved it, so you didn't allow yourself to feel happiness?
Mhm.
This opened up a whole new concept in my realm, which I never thought of as information is just information, good or bad, positive, negative, however we term it. And anything on the spectrum can be unprocessed. And so I had unprocessed pleasure in my body. And so my journey through that was learning to allow that part of me to fully take the reins and fully take the reins. And so that's why I'm bringing this up is I have a craving in me for you to like fully feel your shadow take the reins in a safe setting, obviously in a safe setting, and have that experience of what is it like to allow yourself to fully relax into it and allow it to say what it needs to say and do what it needs to do and just like I'm just thinking about it for you and I'm like I'm imagining this like really quick release but like really necessary release to be
Mhm.
like what if the shadow was working with you instead of for you?
Hmm. I feel like that's the work that I'm on right now.
Yay.
Because it literally is because I mean the at the men's retreat, like that's the first time I've really opened up and allowed myself to express authentically with no regrets. Like
Was that
sure,
the moment we had together or a different moment?
when I was like running
Just
around, I
oh, okay, okay, cool.
was like hopping around the floor in the middle when we were doing reflections.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
Like I don't even know what I said. I don't remember. I really don't care. But the afterward, when I sat down, I was like, well, I hope I didn't embarrass myself.
And you're like,
It was like I don't know what just happened. I blacked out. I took a step and it was just like everything just came out.
yeah.
And I don't really know what happened. And that's like one of those moments where like I let my shadow speak.
And
And
to be honest with you, that was one of the times I felt you most.
uh,
I felt you so much in your power. And I'm pretty sure I had the thought, if not verbatim, I was like, holy shit, Brent is a powerful man. I feel his presence. I was like, and I felt almost like there's like this calm candor, like because we had that, I think we had that conversation before. There's almost
Yeah.
this like calm candor behind like you had that power, but it was like pocketed, like it was a gun holstered in the back pocket type of thing, but like, you didn't have your hand on it or anything, but
Mhm.
it's still there. And then there's just this like layer of like sunshines and rainbows, and I feel like that layer started to melt and was like, yeah, I can have my gun here and I could flash it to you and everything, and I'm not scared to let you know that I have a weapon. I'm not going to use it on you, but I have a weapon.
Yeah.
It's just like being in that power. That was how I was experiencing you.
That's a great way to explain it because I feel like most of the time I'm a sheath sword
Mm,
and it's on me to pull the sword and to clean it, to hone it, to sharpen it, to take care of it. Because a rusty sword doesn't, it's not going to do its job.
yeah,
And a lot of time it's like, that conversation with my, light versus dark self, like my darkness versus my, like ego versus self, light versus dark. Any way we want to narrate that conversation, because it's really
yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah,
and so, um, like it's the militant combatant, the warrior, the absolute king, the ruler, the empowerment, right? It's like
yeah,
that absolute king that can go there and lead war as the general. And then you have the benevolent ruler that cares about its people and
yeah,
its kingdom. And it's like balancing from being the not a tyrant, because I don't want to be a tyrant. There's too many tyrannical leaders already, and they let their power and their money and things go to
yeah.
that's a whole different conversation. But I don't want to be the tyrannical ruler. I want to be the
Mm.
benevolent king.
I have the imagination that you maintain and control your power because you fear yourself showing up as a tyrant.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I feel really connected with you in that. I think when I've sheathed my power or held back my power, I've done the same thing out of fear of hurting others with my power.
Mhm.
I think is like a little bit, I guess it's, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I'm scared to hurt others with showing up as my full self. I just like realized what I just said. I'm like,
I know
oh
that
shit,
you
this is like hitting me. I was like, oh, I was
know.
like smacked across the face with that. Like I'm scared to hurt others in showing up as my full self. And I'm still gonna do it. I'm
You
still
have
gonna do
to.
it.
You know,
It's worth
it's
it's worth the risk.
it's there's a part of me because I've been a people pleaser for a long time. It's like, growing up seeking the validation from my father, not getting it, never being enough, not because I wasn't enough, but just because in his eyes I would never be enough. So it was like fighting a losing battle.
Mhm.
And as a man, I had to transform and reframe the narrative of seeking external validation from others to finding the internal validation in myself that I wasn't giving myself and I was looking for in other people.
Yeah.
And in that conversation, it had to get drawn back to it's almost like you pull your power back, like you're pulling your energy back that you've given to other people. It's like I've given you power over me, I've given you control, I've given you dominance, I've given you the ability to narrate, make decisions for me. I've given you, I'm no longer a dependent of you. I am taking my autonomy back. I'm no longer a part of that system. That system no longer serves me. Like pulling your energy back to you to put yourself back together so you can be whole without other people having dominance or control or any impact that's going to take your authority.
It As you're speaking, it reminds me of a conversation I had with my brother, and he like it was a little bit activated. I was a little triggered in the moment, and he knew it. He was aware of it, and so he was just like guiding me along, being with me. And he said, you're choosing to be a victim right now. Like you're choosing your situation as victim, right? Oh, excuse me. You're choosing to show up as the victim. And he's like, as you're present with that, he's like, that is like a child version of you that couldn't do anything in the past. And he's like, and you're not a child anymore, you're an adult.
Mm.
That's what it reminds me of when you say that. Was like when we're a child, like we don't know how to, like we don't understand how the power dynamic works. So we're off this, like oftentimes relinquishing it. That might not be true for everybody, but we're like relinquishing it. And then we become an adult, but we still have that pattern of like relinquishment of power. And then there's this like learning process of like becoming the adult version where it's like, oh no, this is my power for me to hold. And it's my responsibility, like we said earlier. And it's the responsibility that's here and present. Oh my gosh, you just brought up another. We had a lovely seminar out here on circling and authentic relating, and something I something I think stood out to me, a question I was asking. I forget what we were talking about, but we were talking about like we're talking about masculine and feminine, right?
Mhm.
And I was thinking about like what's the core wound for feminine, and I was like, wait, what's the core wound for masculine? And to me, what I came to, because I just burst into tears because I realized it was something so connected to me, um, which I was like, oh, to me, the core wound of being male and masculine is being given a massive amount of power and not having the know with all what to do with it. And I described it that day. I actually described it as it felt like I was a 5-year-old kid that was handed a broadsword
Mm.
and I didn't know how to use it or how to wield it, but it was mine. That's how I feel masculinity is. It's this massive power that holds over other people, and I'm scared to use it because I don't know how it works fully. I don't
Mhm.
know how to use it. Nobody taught me how to use it, and that's like not a bash to my parents. It's just like even my dad, had the same exact situation. His dad didn't teach him right, and it's like wielding this power that I don't know how to wield with, and I'm still like fumbling with the sword. I'm trying to lift it up, and it's like and I'm falling over, and then I'm like, maybe I should just not carry this thing. This thing's dangerous, right? And that's what a lot of men do. They either avoid it, right, or they try to grab it and wield it and really like force it. And then some of us really like to choose that path of learning the technique of it,
Mhm.
where we don't use force and it becomes effortless how to utilize it. And we choose when it to keep it sheathed and when to use it at the proper time. We have confidence in knowing when and how and where should we use it. And so I feel like this is the core wound of masculine is having power and not knowing what to do with it.
I would definitely agree with that because that resonates deeply with my life, very deeply. And I consider myself a rather masculine guy. Um,
Oh yeah.
I, me with a wig would look really weird.
Yeah.
Uh,
I intended that in a sexy way. I was like, yeah, yeah, buddy.
and it's being a very masculine man in today's world. There's there's a very mm, emotional balance on how you can respond. Because in my eyes, a man is not violent because violence only begets violence. A man is a man is somebody that shows up with integrity, someone that shows up with chivalry, someone that's a gentleman, someone that shows respect, someone that shows valor. They show a layer of cleanliness and character. They can be a dominant role in the room or not a submissive role, but they can still hold their own light and it's still recognized. So if you've ever read the book Power or the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene,
Yeah, I've gotten some of it. It's some cool stuff. I love Robert Greene. This is the
totally.
man who literally made me fall in love with history. That
Really,
I had no care for history, and then I watched a YouTube video of Robert Greene, and I was like, I get it now. I
I'm
get
on,
it.
I think, Law 23 right now in his book. And, I listen to it daily. And it's, It's that courtship mindset, the ability to be in a court and how to, and when I say court, I mean like an older court. So, a true court of like a castle or a kingdom, and how to move with appropriate attention and intention in that space and not one, get your head cut off,
Mm,
two, being able to make the moves that you want to make, have followers, have people understand you, understand the mission, how to be able to be in a room full of really powerful people and not be one, the outlier, but two, not be the most shiny thing in the room.
mm,
Because if you're the most shiny
that-
thing and someone has more power than you or more money than you, they're going to snuff you out.
mm,
So
interesting.
how do I become that very valuable person that brings skill, expertise, and ultimately is non-expendable?
Mm,
As a man, my job is to not be expendable. It's to show up and to be so valuable that whenever the time comes for me to be of need, my expertise is asked for
yeah.
versus
Like
cast out or destroyed.
I'm chewing on a lot of what you're talking about, and I'm noticing there's a lot of like I don't want to say pre-assumptions, but like beliefs that are set on things. So like
For sure.
something to notice, like initially you said like I don't want to be violent. And I was like, interesting. I'm like, I want to see your violence and your chivalry at the same time. Like the way you talked about it, maybe you don't mean it this way, but like the way you talked about it made me think that they're on like a spectrum and you can only be one or the other either. And like to me, I'm like, I can show up like in a Buddhic state and still be violent.
For sure.
Not, and I think what you mean is more of like physical, the behavior of physically hurting somebody. No, you don't need to do that. And I'm like, I crave you to have like be violent in owning yourself almost like in a way that's like as I'm hearing you because it I'm noticing a little bit of that like and maybe you don't intend it but like that control component of, like this is how I should show up as a man and this is how I should look and this is how I'm and part of me is like okay well how I show up as a man is however I define man
Mhm.
right so like that's type of thing that's like kind of a vague and it's like all how I'm defining it. And so I'm more attentive and more attracted to this idea of like, how can I get all my parts here with me? So instead of like picking one or the other, where it's like, ooh, I don't want to be violent, I want to show up like this. I'm like, is there, and I'm asking myself the question, is there a world where I can have both, where my violence can be in the room with me? And it's reminding me of I was on my birthday, I had a birthday circle, which is where we focus in on one person's world and we keep going deeper. And
Cool.
something that came up was I was like, I feel freaking great right now. Like I was in a hyper moment. I was like feeling great. And somebody's like, I feel sadness and grief with you. I
Mm.
was like, oh, that's there. Like, yeah, that there's something there. And I was like, I feel like I'm ignoring it right now. And so I said to him, I'm like, I feel like and what it was it was my victim coming out. I forget the specific conversation, but my victim was showing up. And I was aware of that. And then I was like, is there a world where I can have my victim and choose not to show up that way? And there was. And I was like, why don't I just let my victim in and let my victim be the victim? That's the whole job of the victim.
Yeah.
That's the identity of the victim is to be the victim. So it's like, can I allow the victim to be itself and allow it to just be there? And then also choose the behavior that I want to actually show up in the physical world. And so like I'm craving this for you, one, because I have the imagination that you do this in some way where it's like, can Brent be with his violence, like integrate, bring his violence in, be like, whoa, type of thing in the moment, and then still be chivalrous. And I think that to me is like an expert level, like nuanced way of handling masculinity, where it's like, and I that's what changed for me when I started doing jujitsu too. Is I think
Uh-huh.
what changed for me, my confidence went through the roof because it was like I'd be sitting with other gentlemen and I'd be like, yeah, he could punch me in the face right now and I wouldn't even faze me. Like I'm literally like, I don't like come at me, see what happens.
Well,
And I'm like, I don't need a fight. Like I'm not looking for a fight. So it's like I like that part is just like sitting. Like it reminds me like the holster.
Well, are you familiar with who General Mattis is? General Mad Dog Mattis in the Marine Corps.
No, the name sounds somewhat familiar actually.
Former Secretary of Defense.
Okay.
Uh, I think 2016, whenever Trump was in office. And so Mad Dog he got the nickname Mad Dog because he
Mad
was like a
Dog people.
mad
Yeah.
dog on the
Yeah.
battlefield. And so he is a renowned leader, tactician, and
Yeah.
campaign success
Professional chicken player.
literally. And he has this saying. He was like, um, he goes, was it? It's be in a room, was be in a room with powerful people and have a strategy to kill every person in the room.
Yes, exactly that. That's what I'm trying to get at.
And be a gardener in a be a warrior in a garden, not a gardener in a war. And same kind of concept. I
Yes, 100%.
hone, and that's something like I've been working on now is like honing that flame, honing that sword, honing
Yeah.
how I can show up and display my chivalry, my masculinity, my violence, but not be violent.
Yeah.
And
What is I'm like I feel really edgy with you today. I'm like, I want to
come
like
on,
push
man.
his edge. I'm like, I want to keep pushing his edge. Is there a part of you that feels like not violent, but maybe aggression or anything in that route with me right now? Like in this
With
moment?
you, not
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
but
No, okay, nothing.
I do have an energy about me that's very like on edge and it's like always like ready to like primal. I'm a
Oh, I want to go
flavor,
deeper on
always
that.
ready to go.
Yeah, I want to go deeper on that. What's it like being with that like edginess right now? Where it's like, I imagine it's like it's
Yeah,
like pushing.
I just want to move. Like when I get like that, my body's like, I need to move. It's like go outside, run, flip around, like throw some kettlebells, like get direct energy. Like for me, it's a big thing of when I get wound up, I'm like, okay, I need to do something with this energy. So I need to
Yeah.
go exert it in a way and almost like disperse it and get rid of it, like shoot lightning bolts because I'm Thor.
What's that need to move?
Um, it's the feeling of energy. Like if you're familiar with like capacitance in a battery, you charge the battery. And then as you get closer to the battery being full, then you have a bunch of like top energy battery top energy on that battery that's like not quite ready to get full, but
Yeah.
it's almost like a resistance to get that 100%. So it's like the top, 5-10% is fighting you to almost polarity wise to not give you that 100%.
What's um what's the capacitance? What is that? Like
It's like your battery. So it's like, where am I? Where's my container? Where's my vessel? Where, like, what can I,
but I mean
what,
like what's the charge? Like what's the charge being filled?
mm,
Like what's filling that charge up?
I don't know if I've identified the charge itself. I would say it's more of just an intrinsic
Yeah.
energy that rises and then it feels the need that it needs to be put somewhere or something needs to happen with it.
Does
Uh,
it?
I will admit in vulnerable state that meditation and being in
Yeah.
stillness
Yeah.
tends to be something that I struggle with. So I'm a lot better at moving energy than sitting down and moving energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep it moving. Does it does it feel like it comes, I'm imagining it comes from a place of like it's more um like more rawness. Like I think of like what I notice is if I pay attention to my body, I can actually feel my cortisol and testosterone flow, like my cycles throughout the day. Like if you actually like pay attention, you'll start feeling like, oh, my testosterone's spiking. And it can like cross over into like sexuality or like horniness, or it can be like just intensity. Is it
Yeah.
more of like that?
Yeah. Intensity would be a great word to describe it. So it's depending on how I need to exert it, if it's gym, free movement, breath work, um, roughhousing with my dog, you know,
Okay.
intimacy. It's like I need to have outlets for the energy. Otherwise, if I let it build and I
Uh-huh.
don't do anything with it, it's like I'm like, "Ah," and
Yeah.
I have to do something with it.
I realized I'm not revealing my motivation, which I'm working on doing more. Reveal the motivation behind questions. My motivation for asking these questions is because I have the imagination that is like emotional. I had the imagination that it was like emotional charge that was like building up and then releasing it through physical. That's something I did for
Mhm.
years, was just use physical. And really what I was doing was I was like scapegoating my emotions for a long time. I had to fear that that's happening, but it doesn't sound like that's the situation. So
Man, it could be. I think it depends on the day. Some days are harder than others. Some days I feel really charged and really present. Some days I feel really just overburdened and burnt out and just like the weight of the world laying on top of me. And I have to start kind of sifting through it. And,
mhm.
you know, big ambitions, big passions lead to wanting and seeking big desires. So then you feel the weight of that desire. And it's like, oh God, that's 10 years from now. Why am I letting it weigh on me now?
Yeah.
Learning to not let things push me down and almost not allow me access to myself, because I do allow external desires to sometimes hold me back and give me paralysis analysis, because then I'm like, I don't know what to do. I have too many things
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. I noticed as we're continuing down this line of conversation, it feels like it's shifting right now, but I notice as we're continuing, it feels like our energy dropped a little bit. I'm noticing that. What's our connection like with you? Like, what is it like for you?
Hmm.
What are you noticing in our connection right now?
Lower vibration, more calmness, more stillness, more
Yeah,
presence.
me too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I've been, I love you so much.
Oh, oh, I didn't receive that as much as I wanted to. I wanted to feel the full impact of that. I think that's not because of you. That's just like I didn't experience the full impact of that, and I wanted to, really wanted to. I am loved for me being me. I say it to myself. Uh, Say I'm getting drawn to my pelvis. I'm like, oh yeah, a worthiness game coming up again. I'm not worthy
Well,
to be loved.
it's definitely something I think that we're conditioned by, social media, magazines, advertisements on TV, commercials, driving down the street, billboards. We're being conditioned to not be worthy because it's a state of comparison, and you'll never be worthy if you're constantly comparing yourself to what others have versus what you have.
Yeah, yeah,
And
just like we were
that's
talking about.
Yeah, it's something I've since the retreat has been really big for me, is just stepping into my own power and not comparing myself to other people in practice. It's so
Mm,
easy to be like, oh, they have 100 people a week, they have 200, 300, 400 people a week.
yeah,
You know,
but nobody's making the architect chiropractic.
exactly.
Nobody, not a single other person on this planet.
I'm the only one, baby.
Yeah,
And that is a constant reminder for me to understand that I'm creating something from nothing. And not only that, I'm creating a community and a culture to come along with it, because it's about legacy. It's about the people. It's about them sharing their stories. It's about them being acknowledged and having a space to be acknowledged, because they may not have it in their life. And that's a big part of my process is, with the architect chiropractic, becoming the architect, having interviews like this, giving people the space to be acknowledged, to be admonished, share their story, let other people know that, man, like, we're just humans having a human experience, or souls having a human experience at that. And
we're
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 all
we're souls humaning right now.
we're just
That's a
souls.
recent one that popped into my head. I'm like, that is hilarious. I always remind myself of it. We're just souls humaning right now.
We really are. And so many people have told us what to do and how to do it, how to be, how to look, what to wear. It's
Yeah.
like,
It's so
honestly,
much fun, isn't it?
yeah, I'm like, great, thanks. I'm gonna go wear that blue pink shirt because it stands out more than your gray shirt. Like, I
And
just want to be different.
there's that's interesting. This part of me shows up. there's a part of me that's in love with the process.
Mhm.
And I love that part of me. I really love that part of me. Like I really like that part of me that's like in love with the process. It's like it's ecstatic experience for me. Like I think it's when somebody's like really, I'm gonna go back to the sexuality comment, but it's like when someone's really being pleasured in a way that they really enjoy and they just get lost in their pleasure.
Mhm.
That's how it is for me, where it's like when I'm lost in the process where I'm like, oh, I feel so angry right now. And I'm like, and then there's this like little part in the back, if I like check in with it, it's like I'm like laughing. I'm like, oh gosh, like I'm so glad that I'm here and I get to experience what anger's like. Like, could you imagine if I was sitting there and I wasn't allowed to experience anger? I'd probably be so curious what anger was like. I'm like, this is what it's like. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, what's the specific flavor of anger that I'm experiencing? I'm like, oh, there's a little like jealousy and hate in it. I'm like, oh, that's new. How is this different from other times I felt? It is just like this curious experiment. And it's weird because like I feel weird saying it and I feel weird presenting this way. And this is who I am. Like this is me. As I have these experiences, I'm like, I might lose money or like on the verge of or like scared of like losing money or lack of abundance. And then I like step out and I'm like, this is what lack of abundance feels like.
Uh-huh.
And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, whoa, what if I just sit with the experience and just like experience what it feels like to have lack of abundance? It kind of tickles in a weird way. Like it doesn't feel good. And like, this is interesting. What if I was just like fully present with the experience instead of like trying to make something of it? And I think this is something really different happens in your neurology and your nervous system when you start training yourself to behave that way in relation to your experience. And it's to me, this is, I've been on, I'll reveal this. I've been on plenty of Buddhic adventures of going through enlightenment phases, as I call it, which is like recycling and rehashing the enlightenment cycle, as I call it, or at least my experience and my learned experience. And like that to me is like how you get into the Buddhic state is when you're completely present with every experience. Like there's this idea like the key to relieving suffering is like relinquishing suffering. No, it's your relationship to suffering changes. The suffering doesn't go anywhere. It's always going to be there. There's always going to be pain. There's always going to be suffering. There's going to be anger. There's going to be grief. There's going to be this, that, that, that. It's all going to be there. And it's all part of the experience. So instead of trying to like run away from it, avoiding the pain, which is discover, that's the first season of Network. It's the lowest energy, the low consciousness, the victim. It's the running away or try to avoid the pain. And you know somebody's in that season when they're like, "Can you just get this out of pain?" And I look at them and say, "That's not what I do." I said, "I want you to get out of pain, and we're going to go about it a different way. We're going to unpackage the pain. Because if you unpackage that gift and take the gift out, then you won't have the gift anymore, which is the pain, right? But you'll actually have what's on the inside. So it doesn't have to sit around anymore. You have the gift that's actually sitting there waiting to be relieved."
Well, I love that because same thing with the person. If you take the lessons that they've learned over their lifetime and you erase the memories that were painful, they'll lose the lessons that taught them to change so they're not in pain anymore.
I would say even more than that, they lose themselves.
Precisely.
Our
Yeah.
scars, this is something I used to tell myself, and I still tell myself this every once in a while. And the ways that I'm fucked up are the ways that I'm extraordinary. Because the ways you're fucked up is it's your own story. It's never been written before. It's literally one time in the world. And that's what creates your personality. That's what creates you, the way you defend against it, the survival strategies you created, everything, the nuances of going through the process of creating scars and making the parts of you that are fucked up, as we put them. Those are the things that make you extraordinary, make you miraculous. The reason everything I'm talking about on this call, that like on this podcast today, is literally things and pain and suffering and just anguish and despair that I've experienced over my life that I've unpackaged, and I got to experience the gifts of them.
Uh-huh.
I got to have my first experience of depression, which was like one of my greatest. It's so cool. So awesome. It sucked in the moment so bad. And it was awesome what came out of it. Because what came out of it is it was all about loneliness. For the first time, I moved away out of my parents' home and I was at chiropractic school. And for the first time, I felt what it was like to not have people around me. And I felt fucking lonely. I felt really lonely. And I didn't know what loneliness felt like. This was the first time I really allowed loneliness to actually hit my heart. And I realized I don't want to be alone. So I started creating communities. I started bringing people together. And then I realized when I was bringing people together, it was from a place of avoidance and eventually kept evolving, especially through network care. Network care kept opening up deeper layers. As I got adjusted more, I started opening up deeper layers to who I was. And then I realized it was even something more. Oh, my gift is bringing people together. My gift is I can hold people, I can hold space for people like no business. You know me. You've seen some of the situations where people get uncomfortable and I know how to like just slowly like pat them down and bring them down into it. And like before they know it, they're like purring. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. And it's not from a place of manipulation. It's just like I know how to work with people where they could be with themselves and I can also be fully present with it. I can hold space like nobody's beeswax. And that's my gift. That's what I'm good at, man. And it came from being in my suffering. The first stage was being alone. It was really
Mhm.
truly feeling what it felt like to be alone. And so what happened was I craved to be around others. I craved to create communities. And I realized like, oh, if I just show up as me, this extraordinary thing happens where people start coming together. Wow, that's amazing. And then other things started coming up, like being weird. I was like so scared to be weird or be different. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's scary to be different. What if I'm away from the social norm? What if I'm not with the group? What if I, and then all of a sudden I started being more weird and people started falling in love with who I was. Because they're like, oh, I even have like a video on my course lessons for my clients that's it's called Weird is What You Want. Like, and it is because weird is you and
Mhm.
you are the most magnificent thing you can be. So let's get weird, like, right? And so, and maybe weird is like your normal or like whatever. I don't know what your weird is, but like we're all a little bit different. But learning to own that and bring that in, and I think just me learning to be okay with that side of myself, it's invited people to get more weird with me. And then I'm
Mhm.
inviting the best version of people up to me, and they're like, "Oh, life could be lived this way." Like, I think I kind of want what you're having. I don't know what it is, but I want what you're having. I'm like, me too.
Yeah, I like weirdness because it makes you stand out. It makes you be different. It makes you go outside of the norm. My girlfriend and I talk about when we go to the airport, it's like people are carbon copies of one another. They're all wearing the same clothing, they have the same bags or the same
It's fun to
purse.
try to look for your suitcase, and they all look the same, right? They're all black and gray and blue.
And it's like, you know, be unique, be unique,
Yeah,
be special.
and I think
Be,
more important, be your unique.
yes.
Be your unique, whatever your unique is. Like I'm like, what's the most vulnerable thing I can reveal right now? I was like, I was like, dude, I freaking love anime. I'm sorry, I'm a big anime fan, and I feel a little like some part of me is like, I'm that dog. I was like, I love anime, but dude, I love anime. There's like, and I think what touches me about the stories is they have a consistency, like the culture, like the Japanese culture, is very much often like is not our culture, so it has different norms. And I kind of like the fresh shakeup of like different stories of how they reenact stories. There is like consistency in how they organize stuff, but like I like the silliness. I like the outlandishness. I like the hyperboles. Like there's a lot of hyperboles in anime, and it's just like way over the top. They're not scared to like over sexualize things or over like make something super funny or dark humor or different things. Like they're very extremes. One of the shows I love. I'm so glad this just popped into my head. Do you know the show Baki?
Of course.
Thank you. I love you right now.
Hockey's amazing.
This is perfect for this topic. I started watching Baki, and for those who don't know, it's an aggressive overmasculation. And I started watching it, and I'm like, I was just zoned in on this show, and I'm like, why am I so attracted to the show? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I want that.
Mhm.
I want that grotesque level of masculinity and strength. I want that on some level. And I realized the writer of that show is freaking brilliant. I don't know who it is, but it's freaking brilliant. And the reason why is because he called out something that I don't think much of any of the other like, people in the media industry are really pointing out. A lot of it's softening or like, putting restrictions. And then there's like this group of people, and it's that writer isn't the only one to do it. Like the other writers have done this before, but just like how far can we push the edge?
Yeah.
How uncomfortable can we get with this specific topic? And I think he did it with masculinity and it created something beautiful, which before I knew it, I'm like, why am I so in love with like this show is like over the top. Like it's aggressive.
For
Like
sure.
man stops a tank with, his fist, type of thing. Or like, he literally beats the living shit out of somebody, for 20 minutes, just continually punching him until his face is literally flat with the pavement. Like it's just absurd stuff. But then there's still like that layer of like, why am I still interested in watching this?
Mhm.
And I think there's something like the Dofsky-esque stuff. I don't know if you know Crime and Punishment, but like the shadow, right? The shadow self of like, do we actually want our shadow? And like it opened up just watching that show, and I love it when media does this, any type of artwork does this, when it opened up a whole new doorway of I was like, oh, this is what it's like to be with my masculinity. Like this is actually something I crave, and this is something, and like how can I be more like owning of the fact that I actually like this, right? And I want to hear your thoughts on this too, because I'm so excited you've watched the show.
Oh, I've watched Baki. I think I've rewatched the first season a few times.
Yeah,
So if you've never watched Baki, it's a martial art. It's an anime about martial artists that practice different types of martial arts that ultimately are cumulatively coming together to have a massive tournament of the greatest martial artists and fighters of the world. Not just tournament martial artists, but we're talking about convicts, special operations. We're talking about the elite of the elite across the planet have this synergistic call, almost a primal draw to all accumulate in one location and then essentially have a fight to the death, but not in one location. They can attack one another whenever and wherever. If you're in the middle of the shower and all of a sudden dude attacks you in the middle of the shower, like so be it. You got to defend yourself. And the storyline follows this high schooler that he had previously just won the greatest well, it was like the greatest fighter in Japan.
the Rai Tai tournament. It's like the greatest tournament in Japan, the underground,
Yeah,
like
he's like the
fighting.
underground fighter, underground martial artist, and he's like a 17-year-old teenager, and his dad's the like literally
The
one of
strongest man in the world. He's like
the strongest men.
absurdly,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so the story essentially revolves around Baki, which is this teenager that's going to start getting attacked by all these different people, but he's really the strongest. But it's with anime, it's always the underdog story. It's always the hero's journey.
Yeah, yeah,
And I love that because like my story is the underdog journey. It's the hero's journey, coming from nothing, being able to accomplish and build yourself and overcome the adversity, create the resilience, change your character into this warrior, right? And that's ultimately is watching him go through that that change and go from a boy and again hero's journey, rite of passage. Ultimately, as a man, we go through multiple rites of passage and we don't give ourselves the gratification of those rites of passage. It's like we graduate college or we graduate high school, we go straight to college. We don't celebrate the rite of passage of the accumulation of knowledge that we just acquired. We go to college, you get out, you get a job. You got to pay your bills because you got student loans. You
yeah,
don't celebrate, the accomplishment and the rite of passage you've just accumulated. You just bought your first car. You just had your first child. You just got a new puppy.
yeah.
You
Done
uh,
your first flying armbar.
just got your first flying armbar. It, we really don't give ourselves the gratification for rites of passage. And I think the Baki does a great job in showing the adversity and the different types of adversity that you can come across, even though you're already a quote unquote master or you've reached a certain level. There's always going to be people that are better than you or more well suited or more well versed at different things that you're going to have to overcome and adapt and potentially maybe conquer or beat or survive. So I don't know. Anime always gets my inner child stirred up. It always makes me believe in myself and believe that
Yeah.
just because like that person can't do it doesn't mean that I can't. It's like I'm not you. We're not the same.
Yeah.
And I can do this. And you may not be able to right now or ever, but right now I'm going to try as hard as I can. And I may lose, I may die, but I'm going to try. And I'm going to give everything I can. And I love that anime has that kind of Kaizen mentality of always growing, always pushing into adversity, and always becoming better and seeking one's best self.
Yeah. Yeah.
Long rant there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like I like the highlighting. I'm like recalling other animes, and I'm like I like the highlighting of consistency and like the highlighting of principle. So like it's funny. It's funny that we're talking about this because I've been thinking about this the last like month or so. It kept popping into my head. I bet the field was like organizing this for this conversation, but I noticed I'm like there's a consistent character in like all the largest animes. There's a consistent character, which is they're kind of aloof. They're kind of like the stupid, lovable idiot, right? And something that's unique about them is they're always principled.
Mhm.
They're like, I stand for this. Doesn't matter if the person is stronger, weaker, whatever. Like, this is what I stand for. This is what I know to be true, and I don't change. And so I'm like, that's the layer I didn't realize. Like, I was paying attention to like the lovable idiot, but something as we're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, there's that layer of like they're always principled. They're always like, I'm not going to move on what I want. And even if it kills me or rips off my hands or arms while doing it, like this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to stick to it. And I think that's something I really appreciate in watching anime. Maybe that's my psyche like pushing me to learn more about it. You know, the culture is like like I guess the culture of honor almost in like Japan of like almost like staying to your word. And like I think about that in like it was the practice of seppuku. You know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
I almost made that one of my words for my business, like one of my words. And the reason why is because I wanted that intensity. I like the gruesomeness of the thought of it. Like if I can't achieve this, like I'm gonna take myself out. It's do or die. It's also the I forget which was it Greek or was it um it was the Trojan War that they burned the ships. I forget what the story is.
So that would be the War of Sparta, or no,
Okay,
Troy.
sorry.
Troy. They burned the ships and they
Yeah,
made Trojan horse.
yeah. So that one. So how they got onto land and they said we burned the ships because then there's only one option, which is succeed or die. And so I'm loving like the intensity of that and the gruesomeness of it. Like I think it brings some like realness and rawness. It for me it drops me in my belly and it really grounds me because I'm like, okay, instead of being like in this abstract space, which I'm really good at that, if you haven't figured that out by this point, 90 minutes in, really good at abstracting things. And so things that like reground me, I really appreciate oftentimes and in a healthy way too. Sometimes I'm like, I need to be with the abstract. Sometimes I'm like, I need to be with the rawness of like, what's here right now. It's like, I'm horny, hungry, I'm thirsty, you know, like, I'm like, I need to make money right now. Like, those are all real things. We all
Yeah.
experience that. And it's cool to be like all happy go lucky and be like, you know, oh, you should process your emotions. And it's hard to process your emotions while also being in the state of like, I don't have enough money to eat, like literally eat this month. You know, having been in those two contradictions. And I'm going to argue that it's important to do that at that time. That is the time to do it
Mhm.
because that's the time it's most trigger, most activated, open. There's not like another time that's coming along where you're more stable to do it. Stop looking for more stability. Seek more stability to handle more instability if you are seeking it.
Mhm.
But looking for more instability and the right amount. You don't want to go too much. There's a balance between stability and instability, having the right amount. And when we seek out that like proper balance and really find it, instead of keep like, and I'm like coming back to something that Donnie says, which is like, seek out or extraordinary, otherwise ordinary will claim you. Or is it claim extraordinary, otherwise ordinary will claim you?
Yeah.
And it's like it's a really real thing. And most people they choose ordinary, and we don't realize we do it. I do it all the time on accident as well, and
Well, it's
I've
gonna
grace with myself for that.
Yeah, you're gonna pursue ordinary until extraordinary becomes your new norm. Then as you find extraordinary, It's like you're looking for that extra in the ordinary to maintain and sustain the extraordinary.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, and then we look to the new level ordinary, right? New level ordinary, right? But really extraordinary is a dynamic system, ever changing. This is why we talk to people about wellness care and lifetime care. Like, why should I go see a chiropractor all my life? I'm like, do you want to feel extraordinary your whole life? Like, like that type of thing. It's like you're either growing or you're dying. There's no maintenance. Maintenance is dying. I'll say that again. Maintenance is dying, right? So it's like you're either growing or you're dying. So as we experience new things and new things come into your life, that's why we recommend people to keep pursuing chiropractic care. Because as you change, new level, new devil, new stuff's gonna come in, new stuff and new ways you gotta learn. And you don't have to, but it helps to have a guide. It freaking helps to have a guide. It helps somebody guide you along and really be the assistant that you need, be the doctor that you need. And I mean doctor in the true form, the Latin term. Ducray to be, yeah, you're smiling because you know it. Is Ducray to be the teacher,
yes,
to be the Sifu. Like that is like that's what it is. Like we're meant here to teach people. We're not here to just deliver a treatment.
uh-uh.
It's not what we do. We do not do that. We're not here to deliver a treatment. We're here to serve up life. Okay? That's what we're here to do.
Danny has a saying. I've heard him say it a few times. You may have heard it a few times. He's
Probably.
like, he's like, chiropractic is not a treatment. It's a treat, but it's not a treatment.
Yes, I forgot about that one. That one's so good.
And I
Treat.
always hear it. I'm like, oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And this
Well,
goes back to what we were saying. Like, we're not trying to correct anything. We're not
no,
like what we were talking about originally. Like, we're not trying to correct anything. Like, I'm not looking at that atlas off to the right as right or wrong.
no.
I'm
We're
not trying
trying
to
to,
treat that. It's an adaptation. It's a defensive strategy, and there's a reason your body put it there.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's, I love when people come in, they're like, oh, I'm so broken. Like, yeah, you and everybody else.
Yeah.
No,
What is broken, that mentality.
exactly. I'm like, you're adapting. I was like, your body's keeping you alive. I was like, you have diabetes and you have pitting edema, and you still consume high carbohydrate diets. You don't get enough sun and you're sedentary, so you don't get exercise.
And
So
you're still alive.
and you're still alive.
Oh my gosh, you're still alive though.
Right.
Isn't
And
that
I'm
extraordinary?
that's amazing. Let's just sit down and celebrate the fact that your body is it's doing its job. It's keeping you alive as it's intended to. So well done. Congratulations. Let's make that conversation a little bit better.
And it's time for more.
Yes.
The
Yes.
the bell is ringing. The pain has showed up. One of my favorite ones. It kept coming up throughout, but it feels like an appropriate time to share it. This is another Donnieism because there's a lot of them. You'll just keep hearing them come out of my mouth because there's a reason they keep coming up. The whole point of pain is to interrupt your life, and so it's like the bell has been rung. It's time to claim more. And again, we go back here: you're either growing or you're dying. So you can claim more, or you can keep sitting with the pain. I mean, you can go treat your pain, like that's fine. And my concern comes in when somebody treats their pain is just using exercises to avoid the pain, or getting a surgery to remove the organ that's triggering the pain, or taking a drug to mask the pain. And like there's ways like I work with a naturopath out here, absolutely love him. And there's ways to use drugs in an appropriate way that are really effective. And if you're utilizing it just to block or avoid the pain, what's the point?
Exactly.
Like you're just finding a new way to be stable. You're finding a new way to sit at where you're at. And you can keep doing that, but we as chiropractors know, we study this thoroughly, it's like you're moving towards death. That's the reality of it. So like human right, it's your choice. You can do whatever the heck you want, which
Mhm.
is awesome. I always support human right above everything. I'd have people ask me about the whole shot and everything, and I'd tell them my first rule is above all, you have the right to your body. Let's start there. That would be my first conversation before I say anything out of my mouth. You have a right to your body. So I think that's really important.
I love that. Uh, I might integrate some of that in my own practice because
Yeah.
I typically just say, pain is a check engine light.
Yeah.
letting the body, the nervous system is responding, is sending a signal saying, hey, something's wrong and I need some maintenance. I need to be addressed. I need to care. On average, when a person's check engine light in their car comes on, it takes them an average of 9 days to take it to the shop to figure out what's going on with it.
Yeah.
It's like, are you going to be that person that waits 9 days to be in pain, to take Tylenol, to do something other than actually go get the root cause addressed?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
no, choose to be different. Choose that extraordinary life versus being average.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It is also, the journey is a lot more fun than people expect. I would, it can be effortless, but it's not always easy.
Hmm. Easy. I often hear people talk about how hard things are. And I'm like, is it hard? You know?
That's the effortless component. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you do when you actually see how like how much, and I know you know this. I've worked with emotions a lot. This is something I'm really good in. Like I've worked through the slew of emotions. I grew up with a technique that solely focused on emotions and updating the subconscious mind. So like I get a strong understanding of emotions. I love studying psychology and understanding how people operate. I've worked with people somewhat in that capacity in my office. And the thing is with emotions is they're designed, they're part of the reactor intelligence network. It's the part of us that just reacts.
Mhm.
Oh, it's designed to just be like, oh, I'm angry. Okay, we're done. Like that's it.
Yep.
And so people like hold off on that moment for so long. They're like 20 years of feeling that. And then they finally experience it and they're just like, oh, type of thing. They're like, oh, like this huge reaction. And then it's gone. And the body like purges.
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, it was hard. Like 2 seconds. It was hard to like pop the door open, but when it opened up, it was effortless. There's no effort. And that's why I make that distinction. Like I think what you're trying to get at least of my mind is like, I don't think easy or hard is really part of the conversation. Like it's not really a necessary conversation.
No, it's more of, do you accept the challenge of adversity?
Yeah.
Like, it's a choice. It could be hard and you could make it hard.
Mhm.
Or you can accept the fact that it's going to be challenging, that you're going to grow from it. You're going to get,
Yeah.
you get brought into a situation that may not be ideal for the current, compatible version of you that's showing up for that situation. But you're going to grow, you're going to evolve, you're going to change, you're going to adapt. And
And just
ultimately, you're going to come out better.
yeah. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for growth. We're looking for more extraordinary. And it's funny, you just reminded me of the breath work for so like between stages 4 and 7. I love the first time I teach 4 because it's every once in a while people get it, but like I ask them to do holotrophic breathing and they go in there like, and I go in, I'm like, okay, so we're gonna do breathing. Like when I do the breath, like I want the neighbors to feel my presence with how intense I'm going. Like that's the transform energy. And I'm always entertained because when people will like, it's oftentimes our society, what I'm seeing people come in my office is when they first do that, they're very like, they're
Mhm.
scared to be intense. They're scared to like shine in their power. They're scared to be there. It's a scary thing.
Well, that was a big breakthrough for me at the retreat. Uh, permission to go there,
Permission.
giving yourself permission to not only go there,
But yeah.
but to to receive the permission, to give it and to receive it in
Mhm.
self.
Yeah.
And whenever you give it to yourself, you're not worried about what other people are thinking or saying or doing because you're in that state of permission. You're like, I've given myself the power, I've given myself the permission. This is what's happening, this is where it's at, and we'll move forward after this moment has passed.
Yeah.
And that's that intensity. It's like, how intense do you need to be? How
Mhm.
intense can you be? And how much intensity do you give yourself permission
Mhm.
to express?
I'm contemplating like the correlation of permission and healing now as you're talking about it more because I'm like, oh, Like that sounds like something I would say. Like I was literally like, oh yeah, permission. Like that's a huge element of like giving people permission. And like I, like thinking to most of my cases in my office, and a lot of the time I find it's people have the ability to heal, but oftentimes they don't give themselves permission to heal. It's like giving yourself permission. And I'm sure somebody's out there is like, what are you talking about? I have so and so disease, and here's my story, and this is why I can't heal. I'm like, cool, give yourself permission to heal. Like, and that's
Yeah.
like we get so again, we get like it's interesting. We keep having this identity thing come up. I'm so fascinated. This keeps coming up in our connection. Is like this idea of identity and this like rooting to the identity where it's like, well, I can't do that because I have ADHD. I can't do that because I'm depressed. I can't do that because it's like insert story here. And it's like you're intentionally giving yourself not permission to even try to be something more.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
The fear of failure before getting started,
Mm.
perfectionism by
And
definition.
and I'm surprised how many doctors do that. They feed into that story. I think unintentionally, to be honest, but I've had a lot of clients come in where they're like, and I'm sure you've already had this, even being as early as practice as you are. It's like you've had clients where it's just like, oh my gosh, nobody's told this person that they could get better.
Hmm.
Everybody's told them that they have this diagnosis and they're not going to get better. And I understand, like, there's stuff that doesn't go away, like genetically, blah, 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 whatever the story is. I understand there's stuff out there that's not going to go away, but that doesn't change the fact that you can't get better.
Exactly. What
Is
later?
we've identified with, oh, this, since this exists, we can't get better. It's like, no, you can get better and you can still have that thing.
Yeah.
And my example is I usually tell people, I teach people this in my office. I'm like, what if you had, I'm like, let me give you like a story here, analogy. What if you had arthritis, right? But you had no pain, no symptoms, no issues, nothing, whatever. Would you even care that you have arthritis? And everybody's like, well, actually, no. I'm like, DJD. Everybody gets DJD, which is arthritis. Like that happens to everybody on the planet.
Yep. It's a
And not
natural.
everybody gets pain and symptoms. So that's actually not just an analogy, that's a reality.
Yep.
So really what's important to you is how it's manifesting in your life. It's not about the diagnosis or the disease or the label. It has nothing to do with it. And so that's why I'm more focused when people come in because they care about what they care. And what they care about is what's happening in their life and how it's affecting their life. You know, I had a client come in and I said, oh, my thumb hurts. I'm like, cool. And I started talking to them. I'm like, oh, they have anxiety. I'm like, if I could wave a magic wand, anything could go away. What would it be right now? I think it would be my anxiety. Cool. Let's deal with that. Let's see what we can do. Let's
Yeah.
start, you know, let's start there.
And
Yeah.
it's beautiful because nervous system regulation truly does lead to an optimal state of well-being, an optimal state of function. You integrate far faster. You're able to mitigate how you are impacted by stimulation and how different environmental factors impact us and how the narratives that we tell ourselves, all of that information is how your nervous system is regulated and how it's regulating. And if it's out of alignment, like it's not regulating as it's supposed to, there's interference in that conversation.
Mm,
And we align that system, the nervous system itself becomes more vital, it becomes more functional, it becomes more capable, the
yeah.
containment larger. That means that you can hold more, you can manage more, mitigate more, you have more resources, you have more abundance, and you're just as a whole more vital and
Yeah.
more capable.
Yeah. And I see it as this. It's like the brain, the nervous system, the nerves, they're a filtration of life. So if you want more life, if you want a healthier experience of life, if you want to experience more life, you have to adjust the filter. That's what you got to do. And like you can like it's not just chiropractic. Like we're seeing this in the somatic world a lot. We're seeing this in psychology. You're seeing people like talk about just vagal nerve tone. We're seeing like vagal nerve stimulators coming out and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, that's cool. And I feel like there's something missing deeper, which is like, and this is where chiropractic comes in, is the deeper level is like vagal nerve stimulus is brilliant, but that's what's mechanically happening in your body. What happens when your receivers adjust for your reality? It's like I don't like I don't like this analogy a lot, but I'll use it. It's literally like psychedelics when they literally start tuning and like really start working your filter of reality, start shifting it. So your consciousness is shifting the way, and I mean consciousness not in the spiritual sense, but in like the way we perceive reality is really starting to twist and turn. And so and I've had this with people. I adjust people and they get up off the table and their perception of reality changes.
Uh-huh.
I got a really fun one. This one was I adjusted this gal and she was I knew her, I knew who she was and with her and all that stuff. And her boyfriend was in the room with her. And I knew her. She was the type of person where she's like avoided vegetables. Like she identified as the person that doesn't eat vegetables. Right. That was her identity. Like I don't know where it was coming from, but anyway, so whatever that story was, but she identified like so strongly as that. I don't eat vegetables, I don't eat fruit, all this type of stuff. And I adjusted her and something was just like drastically different. And so I went and grabbed an orange and I handed it to her. It was like instinctual, it just innately did it. I handed the orange. And her boyfriend's like, she's not gonna eat that. And she took it out of my hand and she peeled it and she ate a bite of it. And she looked at me with these like wide-eyed like a child, like wide-eyed like a child, like she was eating cake for the first time or something like that, you know? And she's looking at me and I looked at her and I said, "It tastes really good, doesn't it?" And she's like, "It tastes so good." It adjusts our filter of reality. And this is like the reason I'm bringing this up is because everything you're saying is really important, and I don't want people to miss this part, which is our experience and our filter on life literally shifts the way we experience life. I remember getting up after an adjustment one time. This was network. I was receiving network care. And it felt like I had to relearn how to walk. I had such a deep nervous system reset. This doesn't happen all the time, but this was like one of those days. It's such a deep nervous system reset. I was walking like a child, wide legged. I was getting off the table. They were like closing, and I was like trying to get my bearings. I didn't want to keep them off too long, right? And I was like trying to feel like I was like, oh my gosh, like my perception, like the cerebellum, the way my body was relating. I was like, I had to like relearn what it was like to walk for the first time again. It was such a new version of myself was showing up, and a new version of me, a new potential was on the horizon. And it completely shifts the dynamic. So, for those that are listening, if there's something in your life where you're like, this is the point of chiropractic, if there's something in your life where you're like, ready for more, ready to change this, I'm ready to change who I am, I'm ready to become more, ready to stop living the old story of who I was. And sometimes that is, if pain gets in the way of that and bolsters that or whatever it is. And that's if you want this type of reality, if you want this type of outcome, it doesn't come from focusing on the story. It doesn't come from putting the energy there. Where your intention goes, the energy flows. And pay attention to where the intention is. My intention is get rid of the pain. That's probably what will happen. But if my intention is to create an extraordinary you, you're gonna get a lot more than pain relief.
Absolutely. Well, I think this is a great segue. If people were interested in reaching out to you, having a conversation, maybe getting under
Yeah.
chiropractic, how do we get a hold of you?
Yeah. So I am Dr. Keith McLaughlin. I'm Limitless Chiropractic. That's my practice. I'm out here in Tucson, Arizona. www.limitlesschiropractic.org is my website. You can reach me at Limitless Life Chiro. That's my Instagram. I also got Limitless Chiropractic-AZ. That's my Facebook. Limitless Life Chiro podcast, which we'll be having Brent on here pretty soon. So, so that will be coming up where we'll have the architect in the Limitless instead of the Limitless architect. So we're
Oh,
just switching up. So we'll be having that soon. So I really encourage you to look that up. I've found, and this is not for my own purpose, a lot of people got a lot of value out of my podcast because it's just me ripping, like saying, this is what I've learned. You can take my advice or leave it, but this is what I've learned in my journey, my personal journey of going through network spinal, my personal journey of going through circling, going through cold baths, weird stuff, crazy stuff. I even got a podcast I just came up with barefoot hiking. That was a lot of fun. And I learned a lot about myself through that process. It was a lot of cool, but some of the lessons I learned from that on there. And of course, I have interviews on there, good stuff. If you're really like interested in network spinal, there is a directory called Mile High Directory, and that is a great place to go. If you're out in the Colorado area and you can't reach this beautiful man right here, there's a lot of network docs out there, so it's really cool. That is like basically the central hubs up in Boulder. So awesome opportunity. If you are in the Tucson area, though, feel free to go to my website. You can schedule a free consult. You're also welcome to reach out to me. We do breathwork classes out here. We do workshops, very available. I only charge $10 a person a head for that. It's an hour. We go through all the breath work, and we do the breath work, the stuff that you take home with you and start learning how to work on yourself. Because more than anything, the power that made the body heals the body.
Mm.
So teaching you the breath work gives you the tools where you can start working on yourself, making the changes in yourself. It gives you a lifetime tool. And honestly, that's unbeatable. Yes, it takes a little bit more time to learn, of course. And once you have it, it sticks with you for life. You don't got to charge these babies. You place your hands anywhere, start breathing, moving, shifting, working with your emotion. You have access to that at all times. It never runs out of battery, I promise. At least last time I checked. So it will always be available to you. And there's different ways of adapting and all that type of stuff. So yeah, those are the ways of reaching out to me. And feel free to sign up, even if you don't live here, like feel free to sign up a consult. I'd love to do a strategy session and help you out. If you really need help, I'd love to find you. Both me and Brent are part of a great professional fraternity. It's part of some of the greatest chiropractors in the world. Some absolutely amazing people. So I'm sure we can find you the person that you need and you're looking for.
Mm. 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 So much juiciness in that. I will reiterate Mile High in September. It's September 26th to the 29th, 2024. I haven't actually told anybody yet, but talking to Danny, I'm going to be an exhibitor and a speaker at Mile
Yeah,
High.
baby.
So make sure if you haven't, make sure you register for that event. I will be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're actually going to have Architect Chiropractic swag. We're going to have a whole table full of dedicated chiropractic swag. It's going to be super great. I'm creating a bunch of specific apparel for that event, as well as some other things that are coming down the pipeline. But man, I have had such a good time with you. I want to connect more. We're definitely going to hop on your podcast and we're going to jam
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
And I'm sure you'll be back on. And maybe we'll even do one in person soon where we can have where it's just a camera on us and we're
yeah,
just and we can feel each other because having a conversation over the computer is one thing, but having a conversation in person is another.
yeah.
So
It
I
becomes
look,
lethal.
oh, it's so lethal. Like we're gonna end up.
Baki level lethal.
Well, Dr. Keith, it has been an absolute honor and a privilege. And I'm looking forward to the next time we hop on a call. If you live in Tucson, if you're in the area, make sure you reach out to this man. Even just set up a consult. Like he can pour into you and he can hold that space. He can see you for who you are, love you for who you are, and give you words of empowerment and courage and help you transform your neurology and create the best version of yourself because that best version does exist and it's in there. You're in there. And this man right here is one of the few people that I know that can help that come out and make it flourish in that process. So please, please, please reach out to him, connect to him, talk to him, chat him up. He's one of the best human beings I know, as well as one of the best human beings to talk to and to be authentic with. So, Keith, it is an honor, my man. I love you so much. Thank you for your time, your energy, your wisdom, the space, the container, the feelings, the guidance. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I appreciate being here, and I always appreciate your invite. I appreciate your presence, and I'm craving more time with you, more touch points, as Jamal always says, more touch points. More touch-
Yeah, we'll make that happen. We'll get on your podcast soon, and then we'll be chatting it up
Oh
again.
yeah, baby. It's gonna be
Well,
fire.
I appreciate you. And as we conclude another episode of Becoming the Architect, I hope that you have found inspiration and valuable insights to fuel your journey towards optimal living. If you've found or enjoyed today's episode, or if you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget Jesus. If you enjoyed
We got it.
today's episode, don't
Unsheath
forget
that
to,
sword.
I know, right? Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. That feedback helps us stay consistent as well as delivering content that resonates with you. So until next time, stay empowered.
And hey, don't forget it's free.
It's always free.
Free.
Hit the button. Oh.